Welcome back. We're now going to look at some more general vocabulary for the IELTS test. And again, it's something that will be specifically useful to you in the IELTS speaking and writing sections of the IELTS test. And it is connectives. So in this lesson, we'll be looking at some examples of connectives that you need to be able to use for the IELTS test. Let's take a look at our vocabulary list. So we have, starting from the top, but also, because, as well as, consequently, whereas, on top of that. So just to make clear, connectives are used in the middle of a sentence to connect ideas together or to give extra detail, or in a similar way to opinion openers, they could also be to possibly show a contrast in thinking or opinion. So here are 6 connectives that I think you can definitely use in your IELTS test. And if they're used very well, I'm sure they could help to boost your score. So let's go to our first example, which is but also. And here is some examples in use. Driving cars can be great fun, but also saves you a lot of time. We can see that this connective but also is joining these ideas together. These 2 ideas, driving cars is fun and it saves you time. So we're using this connective but also to connect 2 ideas together. And let's take a look at the second example. The weather in winter is very cool, but also often quite windy. So once again, we have 2 ideas, very cool and often windy. So I'm using the connective to join these ideas together. Let's take a look at the next connective, because often considered a slightly simpler connective, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't use it in your IELTS test, because is often used to explain and give reason for something. I don't get much chance to travel because I have a very busy schedule. And highlighted in blue is the collocation, a very commonly used phrase, busy schedule. So we're giving reason. I don't travel much because I'm too busy. Because we use it to give reason to our speaking or writing. Okay, let's move on to the second example. The drink is very sour because I added lots of lemon and lime juice. So there we have some examples for because. And now we'll have a look at as well as. This connective is used to add extra detail in our speaking or writing. It's certainly true, Brazil is hot as well as very beautiful. And the second example, buying a house can be very stressful as well as very expensive. You could also say that as well as is very similar to and, the connective and, but we want to show off our language skills. So using as well as is probably better in your IELTS test. So as well as for adding extra detail to your speaking or writing. And the next example, consequently. So we use consequently, a quite high level connective, when we're giving cause and effect type thinking in our speaking or writing. Consequently is what we use to begin discussing the effect of something. For example, it rained, consequently I used my umbrella. That's just a quick example for you there. So cause and effect. Let's take a look at the examples. In the last few years, food prices have increased and consequently, people are spending less. So we have this sort of problem. The food prices have increased. And what was the effect? Consequently, people are spending less. So once again, we're giving a cause, a problem, and the effect. But before we discuss the effect, we use consequently. And the next example. Due to global warming, sea levels have risen. And consequently, land is being lost to the sea. So we have this problem of global warming and sea levels. What's the effect of it? Consequently, land is being lost. So we have just two examples for the use of consequently to show the effect of something. I would say consequently is a slightly higher level connective. So if you can use it accurately in the IELTS test, I would suggest doing so because it shows a level of fluency in English. And our next connective is whereas, which is used to show and contrast a difference in thinking or the opposite of something. Here are some examples. Art is considered a more creative subject, whereas science is more academic. The countryside is very peaceful, whereas cities are often noisy and chaotic. A few examples of the connective whereas. And finally, we have on top of that, and we use this phrase, this sort of long connective phrase on top of that to add extra detail. It's almost the same as using and, but it's more interesting, so we should try and use it too. And some examples. First, the flight was cancelled. Then, on top of that, I lost my wallet. So the flight was cancelled. And on top of that, I lost my wallet. So extra detail. Managers should treat employees well. And on top of that, treat them with respect. I've highlighted this treat with respect as we often use these words together. We give someone respect or we treat someone with respect. Okay, so that's our final example for connective on top of that. Here are all 6 connectives for you. Practice using them in your speaking and writing. Try and write some example sentences using these connectives. If you have any questions, please go to the Q&A section. See you in the next lesson.